One of the things I love of Fear and Hunger Termina compared to the first game is the increased amount of stuff that is able to influence parameters and in general to influence the damage output you do. And so the question was born spontaneously. What is the highest damage possible in Fear and Hunger Termina?
Bones.
Before entering into the strategies and what to do, let me precise what I mean with the highest damage possible. I mean the most amount of damage you can do with one single action. This includes the possibility of doing a triple rev up to get an extra physical attack, or the possibility of applying a Spice Forge for double spells, because they are still one single action. But in particular, I will not allow AOE attacks, as I think dealing an overall higher damage just abusing the fact that there are multiple enemies is not as interesting as completely annihilating one or at maximum two body parts. You are gonna understand soon. Also, of course, I will try to avoid glitches, but without further ado, let's go! One very important thing is be sure to not do this on hard mode, because on hard mode opponents take much less damage. Before thinking about a physical approach or a magical approach, let's prepare our character. I might be using Marco for a reason that I will explain in the future. What we have to do now is one of the easiest things in the world, you ready? Just go and kill every single contestant. Yeah, it's not exactly required to kill all of them, but I mean, for one thing that I want to try, we are gonna need to have already killed all of them. And also we need a lot of their skills, so you may as well just kill them all. It is not as difficult as it seems even when you're alone, especially if you like to gamble, attacking the head, of course, with Marco. But anyways, let's imagine you already killed all the contestants. Now what you have to do is to increase the affinity of Venushka by using the Skin Bible of Venushka to the maximum level. And in particular, while doing this process, also be sure to grab the Pinecone Pig from the Woodsman house. After this, do the same for the God of Fear and Hunger affinity, and last but not least, use the Garogorov Circle in the Orphanage to increase Garogorov affinity to maximum using Blood Sacrifice. In case you don't know, you can reuse Blood Sacrifice on the same circle multiple times with no problems. The only important thing is that you need to heal yourself after each Blood Sacrifice, otherwise the next Blood Sacrifice will kill you. So to recap, now we have access to all the skills of the contestants, Garogorov, Venushka, and the God of Fear and Hunger. But we need soulstones to learn them. Where do we get soulstones? You could of course just sew off the enemies' heads and just accumulate a good amount of soulstones. Also, I think there is a glitch with infinite heads, but we don't care about glitches, as I told you. There is one way in which we have infinite heads, and it's my favorite boy, the Pinecone Pig. The Pinecone Pig, for those that don't know, every time you enter into a battle has a chance to give you an item. And between the items, with 0.6% chance, there is a Ratkin head. And every time you collect 3 heads, you can offer them in order to get 3 soulstone shards to craft 1 soulstone. Just repeat this process for, all the skills available currently? Alright, after you got all the possible skills available, the situation should look like this. Now that the setup is over, it's time to focus first on magical damage, as I'm mostly sure that physical attacks will never even remotely reach spell's power. So, what are the candidates in terms of power to reach the maximum damage? There are 2 possible candidates I'm gonna go with: Black Orb and Combustion. Black Orb because of the multi-hit capacity, and Combustion because it has high damage multipliers and other things I will explain better later. So, let's start from Black Orb. It deals otherworldly damage. This is the damage formula. In case you don't know what does this mean, I will explain to you. 2 times your magical attack minus 2 times the enemy magic defense plus 100. This is how the damage of Black Orb is calculated, but it's not over because there is also another parameter called variance. As you can see here, for example, variance is 20%. What does this mean? You know, every time you cast Black Orb or just you do normal attacks, you get different values every time, sort of. That's because of variance. In this case, for example, the variance 20% means that Black Orb can do up to 20% less damage or up to 20% more damage. Since we want to discover what is the maximum damage possible, we are gonna slightly modify the formula to be sure there is no more variance and that we always get 20% more damage from the attack. Alright, the first part has been done. Now, how do we increase our damage? Well, the formula involves magic attack. How do we increase our magic attack? There are a lot of different things. First of all, the stat buff from the Hexen. There is a total of +3 magic attack from the Hexen. After that, it's time to use the skill Engrave to engrave on ourselves the sigil of Venushka, which is gonna increase our magic attack by 4. Then, remember, we also got a skill from the Hexen called La Danse Macabre. What this skill does is, during the battle, the more turns pass, the more our magic attack will increase, up to +400%. +400% means this skill alone will quintuplicate our magic attack. That's crazy! And that's also one of the reasons for which I think physical attacks will never overcome this. The next step is very important, because in this game, differently from the first one, you have the possibility to rev up. Revving up is gonna increase your damage up to 40%, both physical and magical damage. So in this case, it's very good. And the last skill we can use to increase our damage output is Spice Forge, because with this we get access to double Black Orb, which basically doubles the damage we do, because we cast double the Black Orbs. And now let's come to the equipment. Weapon doesn't really matter, the important parts are the headpiece, which is gonna be the Death Mask, obtainable by killing, the Death Mask, which is gonna give you 20 magic attack. And as accessories, we are gonna use 3 Chuck Chuck. Each one of them gives you 20 magic attack. You can find them, for example, by stealing from Mastermind, or as a random rare item from chests, or if you're unlucky, one of them is gonna be in the museum. Regardless of that, there is the possibility to get 3 of them, so we are gonna use 3. And the last thing we can use to increase our magical attack is Heroin. Heroin, when used, will increase our magical attack by 30%. Alright, we took the maximum advantage possible from the first parameter of the formula of Black Orb. Can we take advantage from the second parameter, the enemy magical defense? The reason I'm telling you is because we can. The plant called Nettle is gonna give the opponent the status Irritation, which decreases defense and magical defense by 10%. Now, okay, all the enemies have the same defense and magical defense, which is 10. Like, I'm scrolling rapidly between all of them and you can see those parameters never change. And the 10% defense reduction from 10 defense is 1. But it's still something, we want to reach the maximum damage, we don't care about how minuscule something is. And the same applies to a status effect that I think the majority of the players that play the Termina don't know existed. It's called Defense Drop, and the only ways in which you can cause this on the opponent are Double Rot, and I think the double variance of Rot was never used by anyone, or by Intimidate or Persuasion, just talk skills in general. And it's gonna reduce the defense and the magic defense by 20%. Once again, it's not a lot, but it's something, so that's the important part. The last important part is the elemental weakness of the opponent. You see, the enemies have some particular elements of damage against which they are strong, against which they are neutral, or against which they are weak. Black Orb is an otherworldly attack, so we have to find an enemy on which we can apply the majority of the stuff we talked about that has a very high elemental weakness against otherworldly attacks. And there it is, our candidate, Perkele, with 40% more damage from otherworldly attacks. There is only one slight problem, we cannot apply Defense Drop on Perkele, but that is not important because Perkele still has one of the highest otherworldly weaknesses. So now, it's time to fight Perkele. The strategy is very simple. First of all, cut off the arms, so we will have to deal only with the Black Orb, which is more sustainable, honestly. After that, wait a few turns until La Danse Macabre maxes your magic attack, which should be at 670. We're almost there. The last important parts to do are to apply Nettle on all the body parts of Perkele, because double Black Orb hits randomly, so we never know which part is gonna get attacked. Once you are ready, just rev up 3 times, and go with double Black Orb. 3,340 damage with each hit of Black Orb, arriving to a grand total of 26,725 damage. But I think some of you may have noticed something. Did you notice the first hit of the Black Orb did 5 more damage than the others? Well, that's because of Nettle. That's just because of Nettle. Let me explain, okay? I am presuming it's because of that, because I made a lot of different tests, and the only result is that 5 damage is the damage we deal because of Nettle, because of the 10% magic defense reduction. The problem, I think, is that since the head of Perkele and the torso of Perkele are associated to an event that makes the whole body die once they get destroyed, I think for some reason makes the irritation status disappear from Perkele for the other attacks of Black Orb, which seems very stupid, and I agree, but there is a way in which we can increase the damage. We have to RNG, and I mean seriously, we have to RNG hope that the double Black Orb will randomly attack 2 limbs that are not the head of Perkele or the torso of Perkele, because if my calculations are correct, and the reason for which we were not having the irritation anymore is because the head and the torso are related to the death of Perkele, then we're gonna be able to deal more damage. And so I started trying. Again. And again. Yeah, I spent around 30 minutes on this, and I did not want to touch something else on the skill double Black Orb, because I was scared of messing up with something if I touched the parameters even more. But finally, in one attempt, we got it. This time it was 3,345 on each attack of Black Orb, for a grand total of 26,760 damage. Which is a great damage, but the only thing I feel sorry about is that we are not able to apply defense drop on Perkele, so the potential maximum damage is still not there. Oh, and in case you're wondering why I'm not just using double rot to apply defense drop on the opponent, is because if I do that, I cannot apply double Black Orb, which basically halves my damage, so it's not worth it. But you know, the more you question reality, the more you see how it falls apart. While looking through the enemies on which you can apply defense drop without having to use double rot, hoping that maybe I missed something, I actually did miss something. The Owl Cultist has a very bizarre peculiarity, we may say. Specifically, all the body parts of the Owl Cultist that are not the torso, the head, or the spirit multiply the otherworldly damage they take by 20%. 2 times. Huh? 2 times. So, wait. Let me grab my calculator real quick. 44 more damage from otherworldly attacks. This is the enemy that takes the most damage from otherworldly attacks. And you know what's the best part? We can apply defense drop on the Owl Cultist. The rest is very simple. Enter in battle, say prepare to die to apply defense drop, spend a couple of turns to apply Nettle on all the body parts that we care about, and after that, once you are at 670 magical attack, just hope. 3,450 damage with each Black Orb, which adds up to a grand total of 27,600. At this point it was time to stop with Black Orb. There is no way to increase the damage of Black Orb even more. We have to rely on something else if we want to try to even overcome this 27,600 damage. My next bet is Combustion. Let me explain why. First of all, Double Combustion has a very high multiplier in its damage. As you can see, it's 5 times your magic attack, minus 2 times the enemy magic defense, plus 80. Once again, there is the 20% variance, so we are gonna adjust the formula to be sure there is no variance anymore, and we always deal 20% more damage. But there is one new skill we can use this time to increase the damage of Double Combustion, which is Scorched Earth. Scorched Earth is gonna put a particular status both on you and on the opponents, which is Small Burn. Small Burn will make it so that everyone takes plus 200% fire damage. And in case you didn't notice, double combustion is fire damage. Now let's look at enemies with the highest elemental weakness against fire, which is the Headless with 40% more damage from fire attacks. The only problem is once again we are not able to apply defense drop without using double rot, and since we need double combustion we cannot have double rot. But it doesn't matter, cause this should still be the highest damage possible. Let's try it out. The setup is exactly the same, cast Scorched Earth, triple rev up, wait for 670 magical attack, and let's go. And good job, guys! Like in the first game, we were able to hit the damage cap! You know what does that mean? That now it's time to remove it. Let's go into the game files. Let's go to the plugin that manages the maximum damage, and let's change it a little bit so we are sure that double combustion will do its maximum power. And now, after all of this has been done, let's see our real maximum damage! Okay, to be honest, I was not expecting to get 17,196 two times, by the way, 2 times, which means we arrived to the perfect total of 34,392 damage. To be honest, before making this video, I was not even expecting the maximum damage to be over 20k, let alone 34,000! And I guess for physical attacks, there is no way to overcome these, so for today that's it, guys, and see ya! Hey. Huh? Do you really think there is a way? I can finally tell you the reason for which I picked Marco. You see, in Marco Introduction, if you choose Terrain Offense, you are gonna increase your maximum attack by 2. This is only doable with Marco, which means Marco has the most starting attack. The setup important for this plan is, first of all, +3 attack from the Hexen in total. Engrave with the Sigil of Garogrov to get +4 attack. Then, this time we don't have La Danse Macabre, but we have Adrenaline Rush, which is gonna increase over the course of the turns the attack by up to 30%. After this, of course, we have the Heroine once again to increase our attack by 30%. And we will also be able to use another buff, which is called Attack Buff, that we can get either from Brown Vial or from items such as the Meat Pie Plus. This gives us 30% more attack. Also, don't forget, Rev Up is gonna increase the damage by 40%, both physical and magical. And also is gonna make it so that physical attacks act 2 times, basically doubling the total damage once again. Aren't you forgetting about something? The physical attacks are able to crit. A critical is gonna increase the damage you do by 200%. Which is a lot, as you may imagine. We are gonna make it so that all our attacks are gonna be critical hits. Because remember, we are not looking at what's likely, we are looking at what's possible. And which weapon are we gonna choose? Which weapon deserves to be even considered able to overcome 34,000 damage? Of course, it's the Meat Grinder. The Meat Grinder only gives 35 attack, but the peculiarity is it attacks 3 times. With the Rev Up, we have 6 attacks on one enemy. How do we get the Meat Grinder? First of all, you need a Bench Grinder. You can get it either by stealing from Abella or by killing the mob. One of them is gonna have the Bench Grinder. Then we need Duct Tape. You can steal it from Abella or you can find it randomly, it doesn't really matter. After that, Soul Blade. Soul Blade you can get it from the mob or just randomly. And Scrap Metal, also randomly. Once you have all of these and a particular skill from Abella, you will be able to craft the Meat Grinder. Once again, our stats have been buffed the most possible. How can we debuff the opponents now? You see, with physical attacks we have access to something new for this situation. Weakness. Weakness increases physical damage taken by 50%, and the majority of enemies that can lose balance, or on which just you can use analysis on, are gonna be able to get this status. And also, of course, we can still use irritation and defense drop. We have to be sure to find an enemy with a great element weakness to slashing damage, which is the damage of the Meat Grinder, and a lot of these other stuffs applicable. The Sue Job seemed the best candidate for slashing damage, because it takes 30% more damage from slashing attacks. But unfortunately, you cannot put weakness on him. So we are gonna go with the second best choice, the Moon Scorched. 20% more slashing damage, and you can put weakness on him, not considering also that you can use irritation and defense drop. So, after using our heroine once again, enter the battle. Be sure to make him very weak to be sure that he doesn't kill you, and then wait some turns to make sure Adrenaline Rush increases your attack to the maximum. In the meantime, be sure to apply Defense Drop by talking, and use the Needle to apply Irritation on the head. Once you feel ready, it's time to use the Brown Vial to get another attack boost. Be sure to rev up 3 times, and let's go. $5,770 damage, 6 times, for a total of 34,638 damage, overcoming slightly the double combustion damage. But once again, you may have noticed something. The first attack dealt 18 more damage than the others. That is once again because of Needle. Needle disappears from the enemy, because exactly like Perkele, the head has the event that kills the enemy. So unfortunately, we lose some damage there. We cannot do anything about it. Or maybe we can. You see, there is another opponent on which slashing damage deals 20% more damage, and on which we can do all the rest that we already did. The Centaur. This time, we are not using spells, so we can rely on Double Rot to apply Defense Drop on one of the heads. Why am I picking the Centaur of all the enemies? Because the Centaur has 2 heads, and if you kill only one head, the Centaur doesn't die. So, if I understood exactly how does this event work, Needle will not disappear, and our damage will become even higher. So once again, Weakness, Defense Drop, Irritation, we get the Brown Vial, we get the Heroine, we get the Adrenaline Rush. Everything is ready. Triple rev up. Let's finish this. $5,788 6 times, for a grand total of 34,728 damage with one single action. This was very difficult. Also, I hope I didn't miss anything, because I spent literally over 1 week to work on this, so I really hope I didn't miss, oh, you know, if you actually do this particular interaction, you get more damage on this. I hope absolutely I didn't do that. But in case you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And for now, I was Frapollo94, and I will see you next time.